9 lessons from 2022. Now, before I get into that, obviously 2022 was a very, I would say, busy year for all of us, right? We started with kind of coming at a close of the pandemic where a lot of those, you know, vaccine mandates, mask mandates, all these mandates started to kind of go away, and a lot more of our freedoms were reinstated, where we were able to do things that we wanted to again. So with that came also, the consistent and constant war between Ukraine and Russia. Uh, Politics has been, for some reason, very, very busy. So it's been a tough year. And if you're listening to this, depending on when, I posted all the books that I read this year. A lot of those were just, I didn't read as much as I have in previous years just because I took my sweet time with books this time. And I took 2 breaks from books. So 2 months. I took like months off, or like 1 month of reading off just to recalibrate and see exactly what kind of books that I actually wanted to read instead of just like picking up a book just for the sake of it, which I've done in the past, and then they're not useful. I read a lot, but not all books are that good, or I get too much out of them, at least in this season of my life. So with that, a lot of the books I read, experiences that I've had, conversations with friends, with family. I've met new friends, doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which is, if you're watching the YouTube video, I have my rash guard on because I'm literally going to do some Jiu-Jitsu right after this. But these are just lessons from all of that, from looking at society, unfortunately listening to the news, and just, experiencing life, and also, reading. Anyway, so number 1 on my list of lessons is this year I truly learned the lesson of patience. When I read 4,000 Weeks, which I created a podcast, also a video on, when I read that book, Time Management for Mortals, and at first I thought it was a book on time management. Something I believe I needed. I procrastinate just like anyone else. If you're listening, I'm pretty sure you procrastinate. We all procrastinate. Even the greats do. Some people are just better at tackling it than others. So I read that book, and it really taught me that, what are we in a rush for? Like, we're all going to the same place at the end of this thing called life. So, like, why rush? And I really thought, in the ways I want to be successful, whether that's this podcast, my YouTube channel, with family, in my relationships, and all of this. Sorry, Copper, chill. So, featuring Copper. Anyway, so I started to really see, on top of just not only the 4,000 Weeks, but also watching documentaries of greats, whether that's like Michael Jordan, Tiger Woods, all these people, and I'll talk more about them in a future lesson. But I noticed that they have this thing called patience. Like, we think we know what it is, but it is the hardest thing we can do, especially in the world we live in now with these devices, our phones and Instagram and TikToks and all this stuff. It's as if a lot of our minds are being adjusted for short-term gratification, whether that's like, if your video is too long, a lot of people won't see it. This is why I used to care about that, and now I don't. Like, if this podcast ends up being an hour long, even though it's just 9 lessons from 2022, the right people will find it, and the right people will utilize whatever they learn from this. And yes, I do have to play the game, make quick little 15 to 30 second clips and post them, and whatever the case may be. But patience is underutilized. So I think from a lot of the successful people I follow, patience is the ultimate tool of success. It's the one underlying feature that's across all dimensions of success, right? Whether that's monetary success, whether that's relationship success. And sorry, I had to pause because my cat is trying to bait the dog to fight. So I'm stepping away. Sorry for that brief cut and pause. Going back. So all these, across anything you want to be successful in, patience is huge. And there's a difference between being patient and being lazy. Living in California, it's been really difficult because my impatience comes from living in New York, and New York is a very, let's go kind of culture. It's the energy in the city. If you go there, a lot of people say there's something about the energy in the city. It's that. People are just like, yo, let's hurry. Come on, let's go. What's happening? Why is this taking so long? California is much more chill. I feel like people have been spoiled here. I think I listened to Joe Rogan, and something he says is like, California is just spoiled. You have the same weather all year round. You don't get to experience the grueling and harshness of winter, which I think builds character. I love that analogy because I think it's true. You don't have those 6 months a year where you're like, I don't really want to go outside, but I know I have to, right? Because you have to go out and get groceries, you have to go to work, whatever it is. There's that harshness. So people here, it's not about patience. It's just that they're slow. They take their sweet time. And it's something that's been really difficult for me to learn. I think there's things you should be patient with, and then there's things that shouldn't. If I see, this morning, it was really difficult for me to be patient. I went and I went out to get bacon, egg, and cheese. I was just craving a bacon, egg, and cheese. There's a little cafe here that makes them. Are they as good as New York? No, but I wanted it. So I go downstairs. I waited almost 30 minutes for just a simple bacon, egg, and cheese that in New York would take less than 5 minutes. There were a lot of people there, don't get me wrong, but I've been to busy cafes in New York City, and things are just faster. Why would it take 30 minutes? Like, if you create the right system, you can have a turnaround that's much quicker. Things like that. Like, there's a certain system. People tend to make excuses, things like that. So there's that side, and then there's the side of like, okay, you want to build a YouTube channel, something that I'm working on right now. I need loads of patience because I'm going to make a lot of errors. I'm going to make a lot of mistakes. I'll make a lot of whack videos. I'm going to make a lot of whack podcasts. I'm not going to be good, right? I've been on and off for a few years. I feel like I'm a little ahead than if someone was to just start today. And it's probably going to still take longer than I think. So something that I started to really take with me is if I think something's going to take a year. So in this case, I want to have 1,000 subscribers on my YouTube channel by the next year. It may take longer than that. And I learned that from listening to guys like Chris Williamson and people who are up and coming, or like listening to a lot of Mr. Beast, who's been on YouTube and like his own journey, and he's very open about it and discussing things. So, like things will always take longer. If you think something's going to take 30 minutes, it might take an hour. It might take 2 hours, right? So you have to be very, very cognizant of that and be patient with yourself. Like I have a hard time. Like if I think I'm going to finish something in 30 minutes and I don't, I'll beat myself up about it. So instead it's being like, hey, you said this might take 30 minutes. Give yourself a good hour and a half to complete this. And if you finish early, it's an easy win. You can move on to the next thing. You can head to the gym a little earlier. You just garner some time back and you can move from there. So patience is the ultimate tool to success is my first lesson. I know I kind of belabored that a little bit, but if you're still here, thank you. Lesson number 2, we all have an addiction, but I believe that many of us are so ingrained in it that we don't think we do. And when it comes to these addictions, it may be much more difficult than you think to stop it. So one of my greatest parts and solutions to that was when I read Discipline is Destiny by Ryan Holiday. In that book, I don't know what chapter it was, I talked about it, and I also made a video on that book. I learned the acronym HALT. And to be honest, such a simple acronym that was built for the AA community, and for those who don't know, Alcoholics Anonymous community. But learning that has been so crucial for me. And if HALT stands for hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. It was an absolute game changer because I've struggled with, pornography and masturbation, things like that, since as long as I can remember. Like, I probably saw my first porno when I was like 8, maybe, probably earlier. So that's been ingrained in my brain. Like, literally, my brain grew up with pornography available. Every chance I got, I would watch it. And once I knew masturbation, obviously I always correlated both together. And being in my 30s, I'm like, why am I still doing this thing? Like, I become another person. Like the grip when it overcomes me. It's like, if you feel the grip of alcohol overcome you when you're out, you're hanging out with a bunch of friends, everyone's grabbing a drink, and maybe you didn't want to drink that night, but because everyone else is doing it, or you're in a bar or something like that where it's just available, you're like, fuck it, I'm gonna do it anyway. And then you start drinking even though you said you weren't gonna drink that night because of XYZ. This happens a lot. And maybe this may happen to you for other things. It may not be alcohol, it may not be pornography, it might be video games, it might be even scrolling through your phone, like scrolling on Instagram or TikTok. We all have an addiction right now. Like, it's in the society. It's embedded that they want us addicted to it. Mostly it's probably our devices. I used to be addicted to gaming, where like any little chance I got, I would run to my PlayStation. I remember taking breaks on my first job when I was 15. I worked across the street from my place. And if I had a 30-minute lunch break, I would literally run home, play a few games of Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare, play a few games online because I wanted to be the top 100 in the world. I would run home, I would play like 2 to 3 games, and then I would run back to work. Like, that's how I knew I was addicted. The fact that I couldn't stop thinking about it. And like, I was waiting to get out of work so I could run home, I can get a quick bite, a quick meal, so I can jump on the game again and play till 4 or 5 a.m. And while I'm luckily not as bad with pornography, masturbation, the fact that, when you start noticing you're doing it once a day, or like you're in the midst of doing some work, and like if I'm shooting a podcast and then after I want to do it, or something like that. So learning HALT, like hungry, angry, lonely, and tired, has led me to stop. So it's been over 2 months now where I haven't touched masturbation or looked at any kind of pornography. So I think it's a huge step, and I'm going to make a full video about it. So please be on the lookout. If you're a young man, subscribe, like. I know I'm throwing that out there now because I'm really taking my time with this video. I'm going to release it in January because I think it's so important to stop the pornography and only use it in settings where it's like maybe you and your partner might use it together for, just for excitement and bring more passion into your sex life and things like that. There's a time and place, and there's even healthier versions of it instead of using your typical sites that I don't even have to mention the name because it probably came up on your mind already. So I do believe we all have an addiction, and if we utilize things like HALT, and there's many other tools, which again, I'm making a whole video on it, so be on the lookout for that. 3, I learned this year that I really need to listen to my heart more. Over the pandemic, I became super logical and really using my mind a lot instead of using my heart and my body, really. If you ever read The Body Keeps the Score, you know, when things happen or you hear something that's uncomfortable or, you know, something happens to you traumatically when you're young and like your brain does a great job of like protecting you, that it ends up going into your body and like holding itself somewhere. Maybe it's your shoulders, lower back and stuff. I just ordered a book called Anxiety RX. I forget who the author is, but he talks about that, like how specific things that happen to specific people live in certain parts of the body. And he's like, it is woo-woo, but it's also ingrained with science. And that's something that I'm trying to find too, because I've been very much into science, especially with the pandemic and just, you know, everyone's listening to all these doctors. It really made me become more logical because I started questioning a lot of the decisions that were being made. And I felt that they were not entirely correct and that we were being lied to. And now we're seeing kind of the unfolding of that. Not saying we were being lied to particularly. I think that people are just incompetent. And they didn't know what was going on. And they were just like, you need to do this. And then they were like, oh, wait, like, maybe that was wrong, but we're paying for it now. But anyway, I feel like this year, at least towards the end, in the last 3 months or so, I've been really like, hey, I need to drop into my heart. I need to drop into my body and see what's going on instead of trying to solve everything right away and solutions being in my mind. And I need to use both. Like I immediately go into solution mode. I need to be like, hold on, before we get into solution mode, what's going on? Come to the present. Like, what's going on in your body? How are you feeling? And then like, hey, okay, now that we're in a good space to start thinking about it, because thinking from a place of like anxiety and fear, which is something that has been leading a lot of my decisions over the last year, leading from that is not healthy, and it allows you to make decisions that you're going to regret in the future. So it's dropping into my heart first and then thinking of solutions and being logical after. So I need to do a switch. Most people are probably opposite, but I need to switch it off because I've become very, very heady. And then keeping with that, number 4 is incompetent people exist all the way to the top. Like, I started really seeing, and this came up in the pandemic a little bit, but I started realizing like, wow, no one really knows what they're doing. Most of them act like they know what they're doing, but day by day, we're all figuring it out as we go. Like, everybody. Like, you can go all the way to the top, the president, all his advisors, like all these things, they're literally like figuring it out. So it humbles me in a lot of ways that, you know, I don't have all the answers, which is why this podcast is called the Ponder Podcast. And it's why everything is, you know, all my channels are Ruben Ponders, because like, I don't know. I'm trying to figure it out. I'm learning along the way. And I never want to be like, I absolutely know this to be true. And I'm like, I can say, I know this to be true, and it may not be true in a few years, right? I always use the example of diet. And we, as a society in America, many years ago, when I was young, we believed the low-fat craze. I remember my mom, you know, buying low-fat stuff. When she bought meat, she bought leaner cuts, like get rid of she used to cut off the fat if she had to buy a cut with a lot of fat of like chicken or beef or whatever. She used to buy like the low-fat yogurts. She stopped buying real butter. She started buying margarine, which is just seed oil, fake stuff. And really, really like, she wanted to be healthy. She wanted us to be healthy. She didn't know. She was listening to these people, and now we're starting to realize that, oh, wait, we were wrong. That started actually causing more issues, and you can see the data. I mean, Paul Saladino really talks about this. He was on the Joe Rogan podcast a year ago, And he talks about it a lot on his Instagram page, but how like the correlation of like as we started removing fat and started adding like canola oil and all these like low fat, like less saturated fat, all these things, like lowering cholesterol and all that, like was a big thing. But heart disease started to like really go up. And you're like, wait, weren't we trying to avoid that? So, we really listened to these people, and they were really incompetent in understanding what the truth was and just utilizing really bad science to make decisions for the whole, right? Maybe they didn't know. They probably didn't know, but they didn't look deep into it. They didn't ask themselves really hard questions to be like, is this actually true? Can we like have a new study with like people actually taking saturated fat, double blind and all that, like really high end study? But studies cost money, and those kind of really good studies cost a lot of money. So that's just an example, but just understand that incompetent people exist. Question everyone. I learned not to believe anyone like face value. It's like observe, see how I'm feeling, dropping into the heart, bringing that back, and saying like, is it what this person is saying actually true? Do I believe it? And if I'm being doubtful, like I need to look into them. And then, you do your due diligence. Not everyone can do that. Not all of us have the time. We can only do our best, but we need to create the time to do it if we want to live a truly happy, successful, and vibrant life. Number 5 is really this year. I wouldn't say I became not agnostic, atheist. I've always been agnostic, and but I never truly knew what to believe in as a higher up, and not having something to look up to can be really detrimental. It can really lead to confusion. It can lead to depression. You start to lack purpose. And there's this overall sense of meaningless dread that just exists. And I can only imagine how many people are going through that. But we need something. Life is hard. Even you do it with people, it's still pretty tough. Which is why, back in the day, people had gods, multiple gods, or they had God, right? Like in Christianity. Now, I see there's still a lot wrong with religion, but I see that there are certain aspects of religion that you can take to help you in your what you can call spiritual fitness. I got this term from Ben Greenfield, so not my term. And I feel like spiritual fitness can actually be harder to maintain than physical fitness, because it's like, I don't know, physical fitness came easy for me, but spiritual fitness may be much easier for others. But I started really praying more. I read Conversations with God by Neil Donald Walsh, and it really changed my perspective and understanding that I need a God to believe in. Who's this God, omnipresent, present person? I have no idea, right? I don't think it's Jesus or anyone like that, but I take a lot of my beliefs from things like Buddhism. I looked at Hinduism, like Christianity even has a lot of good stuff to it. So I really started to look at all religions and kind of formulate my own from all the stories and beliefs and things like that. And just understanding that if God wanted us here, he'd want us to have the full experience of life, and not to stop us from doing anything in our lives. And we literally came here to learn more about ourselves, which is what a great part of the book Conversations with God I Got is that if this omnipresent person exists, it literally is here to help us learn the trueness of who we are as individuals, but also as a collective. I know, very woo-woo, but understanding that gives me comfort. And if it gives me comfort, I'm going with it. So find what that is for you, I feel like. But that lesson for me has been very helpful in that I can talk to someone, right? Most people are like, you need to ask God. And it's like, I'll do that too. I'm not going to tell you to do that. Like some people do online where I'm like, you're too preachy. I don't like that preachiness. That's my own shit though, but if that works for you, that works for you, right? I'm not, it's helpful for me to be like, hey God, I really need an answer right now. I need some help. I'll pray. I'll give thanks to my food and just like be grateful for the opportunity to live this life and get to the trueness of who I am, and help others find that as well. So, number 6, being monetarily successful too early is probably not good for your mind. And I got this from looking at all these successful young people. You look at, Justin Bieber for, my generation, I guess. Well, really, Britney Spears in my generation. I remember growing up with her music and my mom and my sister listening to it a lot. And then seeing her when I was a teenager go crazy and shave her head and, all these things that happened to her. And you see a lot of these youthful actors and singers and all this. They have like mental health challenges, right? And there's some that I don't think don't, based on what I've seen. People like Justin Timberlake, I know he got successful super early on, and he's still very successful. And he seems fine, happy marriage, happy kids, like seems pretty good. Versus like Justin Bieber, Britney Spears, and all these people that are just like deal with a lot. I think being successful before your brain is fully developed is just detrimental. And I started to come to realize I'm very grateful that I didn't really see success in a lot of parts of my life till I was about 30, which is hard, right? Like when you're in my 20s, I wanted to make millions. I was like, I need to make money now. Like I need it right now. But I think I needed to wait, and I think most people should, like, because having that kind of success too early, people take advantage of you. You're more gullible. It's really hard to see the future. It's really hard. You start trusting people a lot. You trust people a lot more. And, if you read Robert Greene and Laws of Human Nature, like, yes, I truly believe people are good-natured in the beginning, but society just makes us evil. And that's more common. Evil is more common than good. So it's really hard to find good when there's so much evil out there. So being successful early, lots of people take advantage of you. It's easy, you feel like you've got to be alone because of that. And it's just this like downward spiral. So I can see why that monetary success isn't what it's all cracked up to be, especially when you're young. And it should happen somewhere in your 30s, 40s, where you can enjoy that money. Also, when you're in 20s, like not having money gives you a lot of like, I guess, street cred, or like it really, you really have to show up like and be super lean, be a super hard worker, like put in the work, right? And think that builds character. In your 20s is all about building characters and really figuring out who you are. So it's totally fine. This is why, like, when I hear like self-help people, I'm all about the men's help community, and people call it the manosphere. I hate that name, but really helping young men become better. When I'm listening to these guys that are like 25, 26, it's really hard because I'm like, you don't know what you're talking about. Like, your experience hasn't been too, maybe they're speaking some truth, but their experience is just not all there. So it's really hard for me to listen to those guys. Obviously, I'm much older now. But when I was that age, I was listening to guys who were in their late 30s, early 40s, right? Like, to me, those were people to listen to because they had a lot of experience. They have a lot of books. They probably have families, which they're in long-term relationships. All of that are really great for self-help. But and most of them got successful in terms of money when they were much older. So when I look at successful young people, I'll watch them and pay attention, but I mostly don't listen if they are like trying to give advice. I'm mostly like, yeah, that sounds good, but have you had that experience? Anyway, no judgment. And it's like, if you listen to those guys, I think Hamza is one of them. I respect his work. I think he's doing great things, but he's just too young for me to take him too seriously. But I'd love to chat with him one day and really have discussions and stuff. I think he's going the right way. But yeah. Anyway, continuing on. Right, number 7. So number 7 is, I wrote down magic exists. And most people are like, I say you clicked away, right? Nah. But I already talked about some woo-woo stuff when it came to like believing in a higher power. But I don't care if it's woo-woo. I've had experiences in my life was like, how did this happen? Like, I don't understand. Like, and it's good. It's sometimes too good, right? Too good to be true. But I noticed that as I take more action, as I network with more people, meet the right people, have great conversations, keep those people on my Rolodex. Rolodex equals phone. Reach out to them, provide some value. That value comes in different forms. I've known video editing and photo editing, like things like this I've done for people in the past without expecting anything in return, and usually they come through. Having a conversation, supporting somebody in my work field, my career, my work, even though I consider podcasting and YouTubing my career, and then the other thing I do, my day job, because it's cool, I like it, but this is really what I want to do with my life. But supporting people in every which way and just creating, being a valuable source of information. And I think that just doing things like that, taking more action, really listening. Like, I think when it comes to finding success and being successful, magic is not like, ooh, magic. It's more of like, hey, you're working hard, you're meeting the right people, and then as you continue, you're doing that constantly, like luck just tends to catch up to you. It's like, luck comes to you as you're creating all these opportunities for yourself. And these are if you hear successful people talk, it's literally them being like, I worked hard for X amount of years, and then eventually I met a person. And it's usually that. It's like, I met a person, successful podcast, right? I did this, I met a person, and this person put them on the podcast. They knew this other person, put them on the podcast, and eventually I was able to utilize my the fact that I had these people to find the big like whales of whatever industry they're in. And then from finding those whales, they're able to be on other people's podcasts, and then this whole thing happens. So luck takes into effect, but how do you find that is really by listening and paying attention to what's happening around you. So really, again, going back to that first lesson, patience. And magic does exist. I feel like magic I'm not growing as fast as I'd like, but it's totally out of my control. I'm surrendering to the fact that I need to continue to work, continue to put stuff out, right? And whatever you're doing, whether you're in some form of art, YouTube, whatever that is, like, this is just the truth. And if you're not willing to do that, well, you won't find the success you're looking for. Okay, number 8, progression doesn't always equal a positive society. Sometimes we learn and make mistakes in our decisions. And we're progressing, right, in society. We think that all this progression is good, but this year we're starting to learn like a lot of this progression has consequences. Whether that's creating the society we've created, wonderful to have all this, but we're destroying the planet in many ways, more than one. We're destroying the oceans. We're destroying the air. The air is very toxic. We're destroying our clean water. There's plastics in it, right? There's all these things. We've created so many great things, but at the same time, there's been consequences to creating that. So progress is not always good. Sometimes we have to stop and be like, we need to go back to square one. If you work a 9 to 5, sometimes you may progress in a project and you think it's going great. Then you get to the end and you're like, actually, we need to go back to the drawing board. I have been there. It's so unfortunate. It sucks. You work weeks and weeks on a project, and then next thing you know, things change. The company decides to go a different route. The goals, the overall arching goal of this project that was probably going to lead to something bigger changes, which means all your work was for naught, and you have to start from scratch. So sometimes progression brings up more problems. And then you're like, wait, we need to go back to the drawing board. So all this progress is great, and we have a lot of shit to work on. And that's the same for us as individuals. As you grow, you get better. You're reading all these books. You're meeting all these people, talking to the intellectuals, talking to these professionals. You start realizing, like, holy shit, like, I'm progressing, I'm growing, and yet I'm uncovering so many other things that I need to work on. So it's kind of scary. And I can see why people wouldn't want to take this route, because it's like, shit. Like, I thought I was getting better, but I'm not. I'm just finding more shit out. But that's fine, because it means you're, again, as I said earlier, from that book, I really learned that we're all here just to really figure out the trueness of who we are. So as we grow, we're literally getting closer to that, and getting closer to that is scary. Lesson number 9. Final one, y'all. So this really starts with a quote. That quote is, "There are no solutions, only trade-offs." I believe the quote, if I'm not mistaken, is from Thomas Sowell. I think he's like a political commentator or something like that. I don't know, just Google him. But I know he's like conservative and stuff, but who cares? I'm not conservative or liberal. I'm like in the middle, or as I like to say politically, homeless. But anyway, there are no solutions, only trade-off. I heard this quote actually like 2 years ago. I think I was listening to a podcast or listening to an audiobook. And I heard it, but it's just kind of like, oh, that's a really good quote. But I just never went back to it. But this year, I really, really, really started thinking about it a lot. And truly understanding what this means. And it's like, we're always thinking of finding solutions. And I say we, but I'm really talking about I. Always looking to find a solution to something and just like finish it and be like, I'm done. Like, everything's dandy. I never have to worry about that again. But that's far from the truth. I feel like as I'm getting closer to understanding or finding that solution, more problems emerge. Not all the time, sometimes. And it requires me to say, like, oh, do I want to continue this because it's going to affect something else? And am I willing to possibly lose that something else? Most of the time, it's time. Like losing time because I want to invest into something, right? So it's, most people, I know very positive spiritual community, like the really positive people are like, you can have it all. I think you can, but I remember hearing another quote that goes with this is that you can have it all, just not all at once. And it's like, yeah, you can have the fitness, you can have the money, you can have the relationships, right? You can have it all, just not all at once. You're focused on nutrition and money, your relationships are going to fold. Nutrition, fitness, keeping yourself super fit, like athlete level, because you can totally like not go to athlete level and just keep yourself healthy. Move every day for an hour and you'll be fine. But if you want to be like, say, athlete level, where you do have to work out 2 hours a day, you have to, not entirely 2 hours a day, but you probably spend working out 60 to 90 minutes, and then you spend 30 minutes on some form of recovery, stretching, foam rolling, sauna, ice plunge, yada, yada. Anyway, so you focus on those two things, your relationships and stuff. If you focus on relationships and money, maybe your fitness might suffer. You won't have time for it, right? You probably eat out a lot more. You probably, these things continue to happen. So there's always some form of trade-off, and most of the time you're trading time. And as you're trading time, you're sacrificing something, and usually one of those three pillars. It's usually your relationships, money, or your health. So it's a society we've created, because back in the day, you probably didn't have to worry about, a lot of things, because you just lived in the woods. You didn't have rent to pay or anything like that. So I really started learning that there's no solutions, only trade-offs, and every decision I make, I know I'm sacrificing something. Another example, I know this will be my final one, is we're moving, and we're moving further away into suburbs. I know I just made the video. If you haven't watched it, highly recommend watching it, and commenting, liking, and providing me feedback. I'm trying to make my videos better on YouTube. But I really talked about it there, but we're moving about 20, 30 minutes up north. And I know we're sacrificing the convenience of having the train station literally, like, I can see it from my window, the train station. And the friends we've met that live in this area, we're losing that convenience of having friends so close, having the train so close, having things walking distance, right? And we can walk in this new location. I think there's like a Trader Joe's, but close, but it's like a 30-minute walk, I think I checked. And then you don't want to have to carry bags all the way back, so we have to drive there, right? Depending on how much my crazy ass will just go walk and just carry all the bags 30 minutes back home. Because, to me, that's fitness, right? But we're sacrificing the convenience of having friends and having the train, having all these restaurants and stuff nearby. And we're sacrificing that. So we really have to think. Like, when we go out, we have to think, like, where do we want to go? And what else can we do there? Because here, it's like, we can go out to eat. We can come back upstairs real quick before we go out and do something else, right? In the next month, we're going to have to be like, oh, we have to actually plan it out so that we know, like, oh, we're going to eat here, and then we can kind of do this in between, and then go do this other thing. Maybe go see a movie or meet with a friend or whatever the case may be. And we have one car. So if we want to do two separate things, we have to really talk about it and be very prepared, like be prepared for it. Which I like anyway. I'm that type of person. I want to be prepared for everything, but the convenience is going to be gone in many ways. So there's no solutions. There's only trade-offs, and you got to be willing to understand what you value, which I've been understanding for the last few years, and my values continue to grow, and continue to say, like, that is really what I value. Like, it's good to do a check-in with yourself every year, which mine is coming up in the new year, and really be like, these are what I'm working on. And I do that privately. I would share, like, the tactics I use, but I won't share what those are, because that's for me and my family. But those are my 9 lessons I've learned from 2022. Obviously, a lot of it came from books, but also experiences and things that we've been working on all year. I hope they're helpful to you. I would love to hear maybe 1 or 2 lessons in the comment section below if you're on YouTube, or you can just reach out to me on Instagram. I'd love to hear, like, what are things that you learned? What is something you resonated with when it came to this list? I know it's not a long list, but they're like heavy, action-packed lessons that I'm taking with me into 2023. And yes, there'll be a lot more YouTube videos, very unique, different YouTube videos, all in the health, wellness, mental health, habits, anything that comes to mind. I'm really making interesting videos on. So I hope you'll join me on that journey and be one of my first few subscribers. But yeah, keep listening. Thank you for listening these whole 45 minutes. And enjoy your Christmas. Enjoy your New Year's if you're listening before then. And have a great day. I'll speak to y'all soon. Have a good one.